The station called Kethrava was built inside a dead moon, and it was the kind of place where nightmares came to do business, where creatures from 100 worlds gathered to buy and sell things that should never have a price commander. Marcus Cole walked through the main corridor with his hand resting on his pistol, his boots echoing against the metal floor, and his eyes scanning every shadow for threats. He'd been in bad places before, but this one made his skin crawl in ways he could not explain. He was human, and humans were still new to this part of the galaxy. They were seen as soft, weak, emotional creatures who let their feelings control their actions. The other species laughed at them behind their backs, and sometimes to their faces. Marcus did not care what they thought. He had a job to do. His ship, the Iron Vow, was falling apart. His crew of 12 was running low on food and ammunition, and the next contract they had taken would get them all killed unless he found better weapons. That was why he had come to the Black Auction of Kethrava. Auction House sat at the center of the station like a tumor. It was a massive dome made of black metal and old bones from creatures long extinct. Guards stood at every entrance with weapons that could cut a man in half before he could blink. Marcus paid the entry fee and walked inside. The smell hit him first. It was a mix of alien sweat and fear and something sweet that made his stomach turn. The lights were dim and red, casting everything in the color of old blood. Hundreds of beings filled the auction hall. Some had too many eyes, and some had none at all. Some floated in the air, and some crawled on dozens of legs. They all had one thing in common. They had credits to spend and no morals to slow them down. Marcus moved through the crowd toward the weapons section. He had heard rumors of something called the Vorkith Lance, a weapon from before the collapse, something that could burn through starship armor like fire through paper. If he could get his hands on it, his crew might actually survive their next mission. But as he walked, he passed the cages. They lined the walls of the auction hall, row after row of them. Inside were slaves from a dozen conquered worlds. Some were massive beasts meant for labor, and some were small, delicate things meant for worse purposes. Marcus had seen this before. He had learned a long time ago not to look. There was nothing he could do, and looking only made it hurt, but then his feet stopped moving. And he did not know why she was in a cage too small for her body. Her knees pulled up to her chest, and her arms wrapped around herself. Her skin was pale blue like a winter sky just before dawn. And her hair was silver white, but matted with dirt and dried blood. She was humanoid. Almost human-looking, except for the color of her skin and the slight point of her ears. She might have been beautiful if not for the horror on her head. It was a cage made of black iron, bolted directly to her skull. It wrapped around her entire head and covered her eyes completely. Strange symbols were carved into the metal, and they glowed with a faint, sickly light. Marcus stared at her, and something inside his chest twisted in a way he had not felt in years. A voice spoke beside him, and he turned to see the auctioneer. It was a creature with 4 arms and a face like melted wax, and it smiled at Marcus with too many teeth. "Ah, you have spotted our special item," the auctioneer said with a wet laugh. "She is a Valkyrie seer, very rare, very dangerous. Her kind can see the future, every possible future, and they can speak things into being with their words." Marcus looked back at the woman in the cage. She had not moved, but her head was tilted slightly toward him, as if she could hear every word. "Why the cage on her head?" Marcus asked, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. The auctioneer laughed again. "Because she is unbroken, human. She refuses to serve, refuses to speak her visions for her masters. So we blind her. The cage blocks her sight, both her physical eyes and her inner eye. She cannot see the future while she wears it, and she cannot use her words as weapons." "How long has she worn it?" 60 of your human years, I believe. She was caged as a young woman and has never been free since 60 years in darkness. 60 years unable to see anything at all. Marcus felt something hot rise in his throat, something that might have been rage or might have been sorrow. No one wants her, the auctioneer continued. She is too dangerous to control and too stubborn to break. We have tried everything, but she will not submit. Most buyers want a seer who will obey, not one who might curse them with her dying breath. The woman in the cage spoke then, and her voice was like dry leaves scraping against stone. I will never obey, she said. I will never serve. I have seen 10,000 futures, and in none of them do I bow. The auctioneer shrugged with all four arms. You see the problem. She is worthless. Marcus should have walked away. He should have gone to the weapons section and bid on the Vorkith lance and saved his crew the way he had planned. But he could not stop looking at her. She was thin from hunger and scarred from beatings. And the cage on her head must have weighed more than a grown man's arm. But she sat with her back straight and her chin lifted. And there was something in the way she held herself that made Marcus think of soldiers who had faced death and refused to flinch. She was not broken. She was unbreakable. How much? Marcus heard himself say. The auctioneer blinked several of its eyes. I am sorry. What did you say? How much for her? Human, did you not hear me? She is dangerous and uncontrollable, and how much? The auctioneer named a price that was almost everything Marcus had. It was the money he had saved for the Vorkith lance. The money that was supposed to save his crew. Marcus transferred the credits without hesitation. The auctioneer stared at him like he had lost his mind. And maybe he had. But Marcus did not care. He walked to the cage and knelt down so that he was at her level. The woman turned her covered face toward him, and even though she could not see him, he felt like she was looking straight into his soul. I just bought you, Marcus said quietly. But I am not going to own you. Do you understand? She was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, and her voice cracked like she had forgotten how to use it. You will not sell me, she said. I have seen it. In 10,000 futures, you never sell me. I do not understand why. Marcus reached through the bars and gently touched her hand. She flinched but did not pull away. Because you are not a thing to be sold, he said. You are a person. And I am going to get that cage off your head, if it is the last thing I do. For the first time in 60 years. The woman in the cage had no words, and somewhere deep inside her chest, in a place she had thought was dead forever, something that felt like hope began to stir. The walk back to the Iron Vow was the longest of Marcus's life. He moved through the crowded corridors of Kethrova with the Volkari woman beside him. Her wrists still bound in chains that he had not yet been able to remove. She walked slowly because she could not see, and Marcus kept his hand on her arm to guide her. She trembled at his touch but did not pull away, and he wondered how long it had been since anyone had touched her with kindness. Instead of cruelty, his crew was waiting at the docking bay, and their faces told him everything he needed to know. Zara was the first to speak. She was his second in command, a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that had seen too much war. She looked at the blind woman in chains, and then looked at Marcus like he had grown a second head. Tell me you did not do what I think you did. Zara said. I bought her, Marcus replied. You bought her. You spent our weapon money on a slave. She is not a slave anymore. Zara grabbed his arm and pulled him aside while the rest of the crew stared at Volkari, woman with a mix of curiosity and fear. Marcus. We needed that money. We needed the Vorkith lance. Without better weapons, we are going to die on the next mission. Do you understand that? I understand. Then why? Why did you throw everything away for some stranger in a cage? Marcus looked back at the woman. She stood perfectly still in the middle of the docking bay, her covered head turning slightly as if she was trying to hear their conversation, because no one else was going to help her. He said, because she has been in that cage for 60 years, and everyone just walked past her like she was nothing. Because I could not be one more person who looked away. Zara stared at him for a long moment, and then she let out a breath that sounded like defeat. "You humans and your feelings," she muttered. "They are going to get us all killed. Maybe," Marcus said. "But at least we will die as people who did the right thing." He walked back to the Volcari woman and gently took her arm. "Come on," he said. "Let me show you your new home." The Iron Vo was not a beautiful ship. It was old and battered and held together with spare parts and hope. But it was home to 12 souls who had nowhere else to go, and Marcus was proud of every scratch and dent on its hull. He led the woman to the cargo hold because it was the only place with an empty room. It was small and cold, but it had a bed and a door that locked from the inside. "This is yours," Marcus said. "No one will come in without your permission. You are safe here." The woman stood in the middle of the room and said nothing. Her hands were shaking, and Marcus realized she was crying, though no tears could escape from beneath the iron cage. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "I have seen your future. I know you need weapons to survive. I know your crew is angry. I know the smart thing would have been to leave me in that cage." So why? Marcus was quiet for a moment, trying to find the right words. "When I was young," he said, "my home was destroyed by raiders. They killed everyone I loved and took everything I had. I spent years alone, hungry, afraid, waiting for someone to help me. No one ever did." He paused and took a breath. "I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to help someone the way I wished someone had helped me, I would do it. No matter the cost." The woman turned her covered face toward him. "You are a fool," she said, but her voice was not cruel. It was soft, almost wondering. "Probably," Marcus agreed. "But I am a fool who keeps his promises. Now tell me your name." She hesitated like she had forgotten she had one. "Salith," she finally said. "My name is Salith." "Salith," Marcus repeated. "That is a beautiful name. I am going to find a way to get that cage off your head, Salith. I do not know how yet, but I will find a way. It cannot be removed," she said. "The metal is bonded to my skull. The runes are powered by my own life force. Anyone who tries to remove it will kill me. Then I will find someone who knows how to do it without killing you. Such a person does not exist. You can see the future, right? Have you looked for a future where the cage comes off?" Salith was silent for so long that Marcus thought she would not answer. Then she spoke, and her voice trembled. "I stopped looking," she admitted. "I stopped hoping. It hurt too much to see futures that would never come true." Marcus knelt down in front of her and took her hands in his. They were cold and thin, and he could feel her bones beneath her skin. "Then start looking again," he said, "because I'm going to make one of those futures real." He left her alone in her room and went to find a ship's engineer, an alien named Crix, who had 6 arms and a brain that could solve problems most people could not even understand. "I need you to find out everything you can about psionic restraint devices," Marcus told him. "Specifically, ones that are bonded to living tissue." Crix clicked his mandibles in surprise. "Captain, those devices are illegal in most systems. The knowledge of how to remove them is forbidden. I do not care if it is forbidden. Find it. It will take time. Then start now." Marcus spent the next several hours on the bridge, staring at star maps and trying to figure out how they were going to survive without the weapons he had planned to buy. He ran the numbers over and over, but they never added up. They were outgunned, outmatched, and out of options. Zara came to stand beside him. "The crew is talking," she said. "Some of them think you have lost your mind. Have I? I do not know. But I have been with you for 5 years, Marcus. I have never seen you do anything without a reason. So what is your reason?" Marcus thought about the woman in the cargo hold, blind and broken, but still unbroken. He thought about the way she had said his name, like she was testing whether it was safe to trust him. "She told me something," he said quietly. "She said she has seen 10,000 futures, and in none of them do I ever sell her." Zara frowned. What does that mean? It means that even though I just met her, she already knows that I will never betray her. She has seen every possible future, and in all of them, I keep my word. He turned to look at his second-in-command. That is the kind of person I want to be, Zara. The kind of person who keeps his word, even when it costs him everything. Zara was quiet for a long moment, and then she sighed. You really are a fool, she said. I know, but you are our fool, and we will follow you anyway. She walked away, and Marcus turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there was a way to save his crew and free Seleth from her cage. He just had to find it. It took 3 weeks to find someone who could remove the cage. And those 3 weeks were the hardest of Marcus's life cricks. Searched through every database and black market network he could find, looking for anyone with the knowledge to unbind a psionic restraint device from living flesh. Most of what he found was useless, but finally he discovered a named Dr. Thiessen Varn, a surgeon who lived on a station called Nexus 7 in a system that hated humans. He's the only one who has ever successfully removed one of these devices, Crix reported. He did it 30 years ago for a crime lord's daughter. The girl lived, and her powers returned. How much will it cost? Marcus asked as Crix hesitated. Everything, he said. Every credit we have left. We will have nothing after this. Marcus did not hesitate. Make contact. Tell him we are coming. The journey to Nexus 7 took 6 days, and during that time Marcus visited Seleth every day. He would sit with her in her small room and talk to her about anything and everything. He told her about his childhood, about the worlds he had seen, about the friends he had lost. At first she barely spoke, but slowly she began to open up. She told him about her home world before the slavers came. She told him about her family who had all been killed. She told him about the 60 years of darkness and silence and pain. The worst part was not the blindness. She said one night, the worst part was the silence inside my head. My gift let me see the futures of everyone around me, but with the cage on, I could see nothing. It was like being deaf and blind and mute all at once. You will see again, Marcus promised. I will make sure of it. You cannot know that. No, but I can believe it. And sometimes belief is enough. Nexus 7 was a rough station filled with criminals and outcasts, and people who had nowhere else to go. The residents looked at Marcus and his human crew with open hostility. But no one stopped them as they made their way to Dr. Thiessen Varn's clinic. The doctor was an ancient creature with gray skin and 4 eyes and hands that shook slightly when he was not working. But when Marcus explained what he needed, those hands became steady as stone. This is dangerous work, the doctor said, examining the cage on Seleth's head. The device has been bonded to her skull for 6 decades. Removing it incorrectly will kill her instantly. Can you do it? Marcus asked. The doctor was quiet for a long moment. I can try, he finally said. But you must understand the risk. There is a chance she will not survive. Marcus looked at Seleth. Her covered face was turned toward him, and he knew she was listening to every word. What do you want to do? He asked her. This is your choice, not mine. Seleth was silent for so long that Marcus thought she would refuse. Then she spoke, and her voice was steady. For 60 years I have lived in darkness, she said. I would rather die trying to see the light again and spend one more day in this cage. The surgery took 12 hours. Marcus waited outside the operating room with his crew. No one spoke, but Zara sat beside him and held his hand. He was grateful for her presence, even though he could not find the words to say it when the door finally opened and the doctor emerged. Marcus's heart stopped. She is alive, the doctor said, and Marcus felt his legs go weak with relief. The procedure was successful. I have removed the device. Marcus pushed past him and ran into the operating room. Seleth was lying on the table, her head wrapped in bandages, her body still and pale. For a terrible moment, Marcus thought the doctor had lied and she was dead. Then her eyes opened. They were silver, like starlight captured in glass, and they were the most beautiful eyes Marcus had ever seen. She blinked once, twice, and then she looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in 60 years. She could see Marcus, she whispered, and tears began to stream down her face. I can see you. He took her hand and held it tight. I told you I would find a way. She laughed, and it was a broken sound full of joy and pain and disbelief. I can see everything, she said. The room and the lights and your face and... She stopped suddenly, and her silver eyes went wide. Oh, she breathed. What is it? What do you see? The futures, she said. They are coming back. I can see them again. She stared at Marcus with an expression of wonder and something else, something deeper. I can see your future, she said. I can see what you will become. Marcus, you have no idea what you have done by freeing me. Tell me. She shook her head slowly. Not yet. It is too much. But I can tell you this. You did not just save my life today. You changed the course of history. Marcus did not know what to say to that. So he just held her hand and let her cry. They stayed on Nexus 7 for a week while Salith recovered. Her strength returned slowly, but her power returned faster. By the third day, she could see the immediate futures of everyone around her. And by the fifth day, she could see further than she ever had before. The cage did not just blind me, she explained to Marcus. It weakened me. Now that it is gone, my gift is stronger than it has ever been. What does that mean? She looked at him with those silver eyes. And for a moment, Marcus felt like she was seeing straight through him. It means I can help you, she said. You saved me when you did not have to. You spent everything you had to free me from that cage. Now let me repay you. You do not owe me anything. I know, she said. That is why I want to help you. Not because I owe you, but because you are the first person in 60 years who treated me like I mattered. She took his hand and held it in both of hers. Let me show you the futures, Marcus. Let me guide you through the dangers ahead. Let me help you become the man I see in my visions. What man is that? She smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after a long dark night. A hero, she said. The kind of hero this galaxy has been waiting for. 5 years passed, and in those 5 years, everything changed. The Iron Vow became legendary. Marcus Cole became a name that was spoken in whispers across 100 worlds. His small crew of 12 grew into a fleet of ships crewed by those who had heard the stories and wanted to be part of something greater. And at the center of it all was Salith. She never left Marcus's side. She became his advisor, his guide, his closest friend. She saw the futures that lay before them like roads on a map, and she helped him choose which paths to walk. The first year was the hardest. They were still broke and still outgunned, and Marcus had to take jobs that no one else would touch just to keep his crew alive. But Salith saw the traps before they were sprung, and the betrayals before they happened. Do not take the contract from the merchant on Orbital 9, she would say. He plans to betray you to the authorities. The woman in the red coat is lying about the cargo. There are weapons hidden in those crates. Turn left at the next junction. There are assassins waiting to the right. Every warning saved lives. Every vision kept them one step ahead of disaster. By the second year, word had spread. A human commander with a Velcarisier at his side. A man who seemed to know the future and could not be ambushed or betrayed. The contracts started getting bigger, and the crew started getting richer. But the attention also brought danger. The Dominion was the first to come for her. They were the largest empire in the galaxy, a brutal government that had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved millions. Their agents arrived on a station where Marcus was resupplying, and they made him an offer. Give us the seer, the Dominion commander said. In exchange, We will give you a fleet of warships and a position of power within our empire." Marcus looked at the commander with cold eyes. "She is not for sale. Everything has a price, human. Not her." The commander smiled like a predator. "Then we will take her by force." The battle that followed was brutal, but Salith had seen it coming. She had told Marcus exactly where the Dominion troops would attack and when, and he had prepared. The enemy never stood a chance after that. More came. Crime lords and warlords and desperate kings from dying worlds. They offered fortunes and fleets and planets. They offered threats and promises and everything in between. Marcus's answer was always the same. "She is not for sale." Salith watched him refuse offer after offer, and each time something in her heart grew stronger. She had seen futures where other humans would have sold her, futures where greed or fear would have broken their resolve. But Marcus was different. "Why do you keep refusing?" she asked him one night as they sat on the observation deck watching the stars. "Some of those offers could have made you the richest man in the galaxy." "I do not want to be rich," Marcus said. "I want to be good." "Good," she repeated. That is such a simple word. Simple words are often the truest ones. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something she had never said to anyone before. "I could leave, you know? I am not a prisoner here. I could walk away and find my own path." "I know. Then why do you not worry that I will leave?" Marcus turned to look at her, and his eyes were soft in the starlight. "Because you are free to make your own choices. If you stay, I want it to be because you want to, not because you feel like you owe me." Salith felt tears prick her eyes. "I have seen 10,000 futures," she whispered. "And in the ones where I leave, I am always alone. But in the ones where I stay, I am part of something bigger than myself." She reached out and took his hand. "I choose to stay, Marcus. Not because I owe you, but because I believe in what you are building." The third year brought war. The Dominion had decided that if they could not buy Salith, they would destroy everything she cared about. They began conquering the free stations and neutral worlds that had been Marcus's allies. Crushing anyone who refused to bow. Marcus knew he could not stop them alone. His fleet was growing, but it was nothing compared to the might of the Dominion. They needed allies, and they needed a plan. Salith spent days in meditation, searching the futures for a path to victory. What she found was not a guarantee, but it was hope. "There is a way," she told Marcus. "But it will take years. You will have to build a coalition of free worlds, unite species that have been enemies for centuries, and convince them all to fight together against a common enemy. Can it be done? I do not know. The future split and change with every decision. But I can show you which decisions give us the best chance." Marcus nodded. "Then show me." For the next 2 years, that is what they did. Salith guided Marcus through a maze of politics and diplomacy, telling him which leaders could be trusted and which could not, which worlds were ready to fight and which would fold under pressure. Slowly, impossibly, the coalition grew. Humans and aliens who had never worked together before began to unite under a common banner. They called themselves the Free Worlds Alliance, and they looked to Marcus Cole as their leader. "They follow you because of me," Salith said one day. "They trust you because they know I can see their futures, and I choose to stand beside you." "No," Marcus said. "They follow me because I keep my promises. They trust me because I have never betrayed anyone who trusted me first." He looked at her with a smile. "You just helped them believe it faster." The Dominion noticed what was happening, and they were afraid. For the first time in centuries, someone was building an alliance that could challenge their power. They sent assassins and spies and armies, but nothing could stop what Marcus and Salith had started by the 5th year. The Free Worlds Alliance was ready, and so was the final battle. Salith stood on the bridge of the Iron Vow and looked at Marcus. She knew what was coming. She had seen it in her visions for years. She knew the sacrifice that would be required, but she also knew something else, something she had never told him. She knew that some futures were worth fighting for. This one was worth everything. The siege of Volantos would be remembered for 1,000 years. Volantos was the last free station, a massive city floating in space that had never bowed to the Dominion. It was home to millions of refugees and rebels and dreamers who had nowhere else to go. If it fell, the Free World's alliance would fall with it. The Dominion sent everything they had. 100 dreadnoughts surrounded the station like wolves circling wounded prey. Their weapons could crack planets, and their armies numbered in the millions. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Iron Vow and looked at the enemy fleet. Beside him stood Salith, her silver eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. "They outnumber us 10 to 1, Zara said. "Our shields will not last an hour against that kind of firepower." "We do not need an hour," Marcus replied. "We just need to take out their flagship. Cut off the head, and the body will fall." The Dominion commander sent a message, and his face appeared on the main screen. He was an old creature with cold eyes and a voice like grinding stone. "Surrender the seer," he said, "and we will spare the station. Refuse and everyone dies." Marcus looked at Salith. She already knew what he was going to say. She had seen this moment in 1,000 visions. "Tell them," she said softly, and there was a smile on her lips. Marcus turned back to the screen. "I have a message for you," he said. "From the seer you want so badly." The Dominion commander leaned forward. "Speak," she says. "Humanity does not sell its family." He cut the transmission. The battle began. The Free World's fleet was smaller, but they fought with a fury the Dominion had never seen. They had everything to lose, and they were not afraid to die for it. Marcus piloted the Iron Vow through the chaos, dodging enemy fire and weaving between the larger ships. Salith stood beside him, calling out the futures as fast as they changed. "Left now. There is a missile incoming from below. The cruiser ahead is about to explode. Go around." Her voice was steady, even as the ship shook from impacts. She had seen this battle in her visions, and she knew every death that was coming. But she also knew something else, something she held close to her heart like a secret flame. The flagship loomed ahead, a massive ship bristling with weapons. Its shields were too strong for any of their weapons to penetrate. "We cannot break through," Zara shouted. "We need more firepower." Marcus's hands tightened on the controls. "There is another way," he said quietly. Salith closed her eyes. She had known this moment would come. She had seen it 5 years ago, the day Marcus had freed her from the cage. In her vision, she had seen him fly into the heart of the flagship, his ship breaking apart around him, his life ending in fire and light. But she had also seen something else, something that only became clear after years of watching the futures shift and change. "Marcus," she said, and her voice did not tremble. He turned to look at her. "I have to do this," he said. "It is the only way. I know. I am sorry." She stepped forward and took his face in her hands. "Do not be sorry," she said. "Do what you have to do. I will be here when you wake up." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "Trust me," she said. "The way you trusted me from the beginning. Just trust me." She kissed his forehead and stepped back. Marcus stared at her for a moment, and something passed between them that did not need words. Then, he turned back to the controls and pushed the engines to full power. The Iron Vow shot forward like an arrow. Enemy fire tore into the hull, ripping away armor and systems. The crew screamed warnings, but Marcus did not stop. He aimed straight for the flagship's reactor core. At the last moment, Salith activated the escape pods. The crew was ejected into space, their pods carrying them away from the doomed ship. Marcus stayed at the controls, guiding the Iron Vow on its final flight. He hit the flagship dead center. The explosion was visible from every ship in the battle. It tore through the Dominion command vessel like a sun being born. The shockwave rippled outward, destroying a dozen ships around it and sending the rest into chaos. The Dominion fleet, suddenly leaderless, began to fall apart. They had never trained for this, never prepared for an enemy who would sacrifice everything to win. They retreated in disorder, and the Free World's fleet chased them into the darkness on Volantos station. The people watched the explosion and wept. They knew what it meant. They knew who had died to save them, but Salith was not weeping. She was smiling. 3 days later, a rescue team found a pod drifting near the wreckage of the flagship. Inside was a man, barely alive. His body broken but his heart still beating. Marcus Cole opened his eyes in a medical bay surrounded by his crew. Zara was there, tears streaming down her face. Crix was clicking his mandibles in relief. And standing at the foot of his bed was Saleth. "You knew," he whispered. "You knew I would survive." "No," she said, and she sat down beside him and took his hand. "I saw 1,000 futures where you died, but I also saw one where you lived. How did you know which one would come true?" She smiled, and her silver eyes shone with tears. "Because you taught me something, Marcus. Something the cage never let me learn. What? That futures are not fixed. They are not roads that we must walk. They are possibilities, and we can fight for the ones we want." She squeezed his hand. "I did not just watch the future. I fought for it. Every small choice, every little action, I guided us toward the future where you survive. Because some futures are worth fighting for." Marcus stared at her, and for the first time since she had known him, he had no words. "You saved me 5 years ago," Salith continued. "You looked at a blind woman in a cage and saw someone worth saving. Today I am returning the favor." He laughed, and it hurt his broken ribs, but he did not care. "I guess we are even now." "No," she said. "We are family. And family does not keep score." Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was celebrating. The Dominion was broken, the free worlds were safe, and Marcus Cole was a hero. His name would be written in the stars and remembered for generations. But Marcus did not care about any of that. He cared about the woman sitting beside him, the woman he had bought but never owned, the woman he had freed but never bound. He came looking for a weapon. He found something better. He found a reason to fight, a person to protect, and a future worth living for, and that was worth more than all the weapons in the galaxy.